The Tolkien Road, Episode 27, The Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 5, A Conspiracy Unmasked. All right, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 Hi everyone, welcome to the Tolkien Road. On this episode, we continue our discussion of The Lord of the Rings with Book 1, Chapter 5 of Fellowship, A Conspiracy Unmasked, in which Frodo, Sam, and Pippin enjoy a warm bath and decide to make their way to Bree via the ominous Old Forest. Chapter 5 stands out as the last Shire chapter, the deep breath before the hobbits plunge into epic danger and adventure. As such, it establishes the good things that the hobbits must leave behind in order to carry the ring to safety. Chapter 5 ends with an account of Frodo's numinous tower dream, which, although quite enigmatic, seems to hold a great deal of significance for Tolkien based upon its similarities to a pre-Hobbit work of his. Though not a lot of advancing action happens in Chapter 5, there's still plenty to talk about, as is always the case with Tolkien. By the way, if you haven't already, please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes. We'd love to know what you think of the podcast. Enjoy the show! All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Tolkien Road. This is John, once again. Greta, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, John?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, Chapter 5, Book 1.
Yep.
Chapter 5, Book 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Moving right along, aren't we?
Moving right along.
Mm-hmm.
Moving right along in search of good times and good news.
Yes.
Yes.
And everything else that's good.
Yeah. I was singing, I think there's like a Muppet song that starts moving right along.
Oh, is
It's
there?
called, yeah. So I was thinking about that song. But I don't want to go there.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Muppets are pretty awesome, though.
What?
I do love the Muppets, though.
Yeah.
Rainbow Connection, it always gets me.
Yeah.
Right in the heart.
Someday we'll find it.
Let's not go there either.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so we're talking about Chapter 5 of Book 1 of The Lord of the Rings. A Conspiracy Unmasked.
Mm-hmm. Unmasked.
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 Yeah, that's one of those words that I have trouble saying.
It's hard to say because you have the S in the cake.
Because you don't want to be one of those nerds that overpronounces everything,
right.
but at the same time you don't want to be like, you want to be clear in your
right.
speech.
You don't want to say it like unmasked.
Yes.
Right.
You don't want it to sound like Shakespeare all the time, like
right.
you're a Shakespearean actor all the time.
Right. Yes.
Although maybe you do. Maybe the world would be a better place if we all spoke like Shakespearean actors all the time.
The world would be a better place if we all said, "Aw, geez."
Aw, geez.
A lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about A Conspiracy Unmasked.
There you go. That was good.
Tonight. And first, of course, we need to do a little haiku.
Haiku time.
It is haiku time. You know what that means.
Mm-hmm. There it is, folks. Haiku time.
I mean, we could just let that go for the next hour. I think people would be more entertained than they are by our banter,
Yeah, they would be.
Just our inane banter. Oh, there's the next one. I was just running right along with the third version. Yeah, haiku time.
Haiku time.
So, what do we want to do? Did we decided last week that we were going to go first so that...
Yeah. Oh, do we have reader ones?
Yeah. Josh just got his haiku in at the in the nick of time.
Good job, Josh.
Yeah, just beat the buzzer. I think Josh is our first official super fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super duper fan. So yeah. Good job, Josh. Way to go.
Yes.
You're our first official super fan, so thanks for all of the awesome haiku you submit, and for listening, and for enjoying the Tolkien Road. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It must feel pretty awesome to be a super fan.
If I were a super fan, I would feel pretty awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, right on.
And I really like that our first super fan pictures with a stormtrooper.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty nifty.
Yeah.
Well, since Josh always knocks it out of the park, I think I should probably go first.
Yeah. I actually looked at his right before I got here, and I was like, oh man, those are really good. They're much better than mine. I tried a little harder this time.
Did you?
Because last time I wasn't really feeling it.
There's a little bit more to write about.
Yeah, not a ton though. There's still not a lot going on in this chapter, but I mean, not like in terms of action and pacing. I also wonder though if when we've been doing haiku now for several episodes, really since
more than several.
We did haiku for all those different chapters of the Silmarillion, and then we've been doing
You've written a lot of haiku. You think maybe we're getting haiku weary? Is that what you're hinting at?
Well, maybe, but I feel like we got to stay the course.
We do need to stay the course. We just have to try harder.
Yeah.
Even when we feel like it's not coming easy, we have to.
I feel like it's important to persevere.
I agree. I completely agree.
We got to take a note from Frodo and Sam, and persevere.
Persevere.
That's what this is all about, right?
That is a true story.
Well, let's get started. Let's do some of our haiku, and then we'll let Josh just kind of do the awesome Josh haiku that he does, and we'll do ours first, so we won't look quite as bad.
Our little piddly half efforts.
All right, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Actually, right. To be honest, I'm kind of proud of mine.
Yeah.
I'm actually really happy with them. I know they won't hold a candle probably to the others, but I was happy with them.
Let's hear it.
So here's my first one. Dread turns to relief when Frodo finds his 3 friends more loyal than most.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
Thanks. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Friendship. Yeah, I think that's a big theme of this chapter.
It's a totally big theme, yes.
I wrote a couple of my... one of my haikus focused on friendship, definitely, and we'll talk more about that here when we actually discuss the chapter.
Right.
All right, here's my first one.
Okay.
Hot blessed bath, a final baptism before the long dark descent.
Ooh, I like that. A final baptism. Yeah, I thought that section about the bath was really funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Where did I read this? I think it was in one of Tolkien's letters when he was still in the process of composing Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
This may have been actually early on. He received some feedback from one of the early drafts. And this is he had only written like the first couple of chapters of what became Fellowship at that time, and basically the feedback was, can you tone it down a little bit on the witty Hobbit banter, and just and just tell the story, and because if you read the early drafts, it's like
it's a little much.
There's a lot, yeah.
Okay.
And he was like, oh, well, I guess it's just me and my son Christopher who really find the witty Hobbit banter enjoyable. The rest of the world just wants to hear a really good adventure story.
That's funny. I like the witty Hobbit banter, but I can see where a little.
Well, I think he found the right balance.
The right balance, yeah. You need some. You definitely need some, but you don't want it to take away.
Yeah.
Either. All right, here's my next one. We would all be so lucky to have friends like those that love Frodo so.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
We would all be so lucky.
We would.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, here's my next one. A hot bath is fine, though not so fine as the warmth of loyal friendship.
That's good.
Sounds like
you have 2 about baths now.
Sounds like somebody needs to embroider that on towels or something like that.
That would actually be nice to have in a little cross stitch.
Yeah.
Hanging in the bathroom.
Crochet. Then we get your mom to.
No, you don't crochet. That's how you make Afghans. Cross stitch. Where you.
You think we can get your mom to cross stitch that for us? Then we can sell that on Pinterest.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think we could try.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need a pattern though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to make a cross stitch pattern. But we could look into it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah.
Okay.
You betcha I can.
I'm trying to picture it in my head how it would look in cross stitch, and like what the picture would be. So you need a picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe of a clawfoot tub and.
Yeah, cloth. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Like piping, with like the steam coming off of it.
Yep.
And then like a smiley face over it for the friendship part.
I was thinking maybe encompassed by a heart.
You gotta have a heart and a cross. I mean, you got it's required to have a heart and a cross stitch
in any cross
somewhere.
Stitch.
Yeah.
So maybe a heart with the clawfoot tub.
Yeah.
Inside. And then the steam. Yeah, we'll have to work on it.
And then like the Black Rider destroying the tub.
No, not the Black Rider.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
The
I was just trying to make it a little more exciting.
Do not go together.
Yeah, you're right. All right, here it is.
All right.
A hot bath is fine, though not so fine as the warmth of loyal friendship.
That's awesome. That really, you know what? I'm not going to rest until we have that in a cross.
It sounds like it could be like a Hallmark greeting card, too.
It really does, actually.
Yeah. I think I missed my call.
Like just one of those anytime cards.
Yes.
You wouldn't send that for a birthday. Or you could send it for friendship.
Yeah.
Friendship or anytime, thinking of you.
You can send that to somebody, and it's like a picture of a bathtub on the front. It's about friendship, and they're going to be really weirded out.
This is
a good card to weird out your friends with.
Yes, there you go. There you go. All right, here's my last one.
All right, yeah.
I started reading it wrong. I knew I would do that. Okay. I have always thought conspiracy to be bad. Hobbits prove me wrong.
Hobbits will do that.
Hobbits will do that.
They will often prove you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you don't expect it either. They seem like such simple, down-home folk, but there's a lot more there than
they gotta make you feel like an idiot.
Huh?
They gotta make you feel like an idiot.
Sometimes, but they're just more clever.
Gandalf was with Gandalf's early line, right? Is that hobbits never cease to amaze me.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, my last one. Faced with two dangers, the fellows must embrace dark shadows as safety.
Oh. That is definitely a rock in a hard place, isn't it? Yeah, good. I like that. It's really good. All right, I'm ready for...
Want to hear Josh's?
Yeah.
All right. Let me pull them up here.
Have you decided, do you think we need like a different theme song for guest haiku? Or for reader haiku, a listener haiku?
Maybe we should just give Josh his own haiku theme song.
Maybe we should.
He's contributed enough at this point. I mean, I've got all those extra haiku theme songs.
You could like work in some Star Wars kind of themes.
Maybe.
That might work.
Yeah. Well, for now, let's just do Josh's haiku and
let's just do the haiku.
Yeah.
We need to get that cross stitch done before we do any other creative.
That's probably right. Yeah.
All right, let's hear him.
All right, so here's Josh's first haiku.
Okay.
Dreams of the morrow, towers rise in holy light. The sea calls. Yes.
Wow. I think I need to chew on that one.
Yeah, it's pretty deep.
That is deep.
Well, it embraces that that vision,
the dream
that Frodo has
at the end of the chapter.
Yeah, that's really we'll talk about.
Yeah.
All right, here's the second one. Good friends know your mind. Try as you might, you can't hide. Conspiracy grows.
I love it.
That's actually a really just
really
good haiku as I think about it, because it's got that last line that makes you go
right. Things that make you go
Yeah, that's kind of the haiku. I feel like that's, I don't know if I did that well in my haiku this week. If I had that that kind of parting line that that puts everything in a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forces you to think.
Yeah.
Consider.
The whole title, just the title of this chapter struck me as like the first time you read it, and I remember a couple of years ago when I was coming back to The Lord of the Rings after having not read it in a long time, I remember getting to this chapter, and the chapter title really threw me off because I was like, "Oh, what's the conspiracy that's going on here?" I can't I don't remember what happens in this chapter. And I get there and it's like, oh yeah, well it's a good conspiracy.
Well, yeah, that was the point of one of my haikus.
Yeah.
Right? I assumed it was going to be something bad happening. Like it was going to be like You know, because again, I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember what it was about, and I was like, "Ooh, conspiracy! Something bad and crazy is going to happen." Because that is. I think conspiracy typically has a negative connotation attached to it.
Oh yeah,
like a kind of a backstabbing, you know, like under the table,
right?
On the DL,
right.
Which this was obviously, but it was good stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
I expected it to be bad.
Well, especially because there's this, you know, the riders are after them. The Black Riders are after Frodo, and so you're expecting something bad to happen. You see conspiracy at the head of this chapter, and you're like, oh, there's like one of the hobbits is in league with the Black Riders or something like that, and he's going to, you know, sell Frodo out.
Right.
But, it's a different kind of conspiracy. So.
Right.
So the chapter kicks off, and we're on the ferry now, or we're just pushing off from the west side of the Brandywine River. And as they're pushing off, Mary's like, "What's going on? Why is everybody being so weird?" And just then they look back and. Let's see here. They look back, and Sam says in a hoarse whisper, "Look back, Mr. Frodo. Do you see anything?" And it says, on the far stage, under the distant lamps, they could just make out a figure. It looked like a dark black bundle left behind. But as they looked, it seemed to move and sway this way and that, as if searching the ground. It then crawled or went crouching back into the gloom beyond the lamps. You know, I love the fact that the Black Riders, even though they are men, they are also wraiths, right? So, and they've lost that like sense of being men in a way. They're no longer, like, the way they describe it here is almost there's more of an animal beastly quality to it, you know, that it's hunting, and it's not hunting in the way that a human being would hunt. It's hunting in a very primal sort of like, you know, wants to like just pounce, and there's no sense of pity or anything like that. It's just it's on a mission, and there's no sense of like, this is another, you know, sentient being that I'm going after here. There's no sense of any of the stuff that human beings normally, you know, have, even if they're on a mission to, like, you know, I don't know, capture another human being.
Right. There was no conscience.
Right. Exactly. It's you get no sense of that, and so I like the fact that Tolkien, you know, the way he describes the figure, dark black bundle, seemed to move and sway this way and that, as if searching the ground. It then crawled or went crouching back into the gloom beyond the lamps.
You think about how he talked a lot about the sniffing, right? I mean, that's obviously a sense that animals use a lot,
right,
in hunting.
Right.
Humans, not so much. That's why we take dogs, right? That's why hunters take dogs with them, because dogs will be able to track a scent that way, but humans not. So yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. What did you think of the, I don't know, I think this hedge, this 20-mile long hedge is really cool. The idea of this 20-mile long hedge that they built up.
I couldn't picture it. I read this section, like, this is just me and my lack of probably direction and all that, but I couldn't figure out what it was saying about it. Like, is it just kind of like a wall of Jericho? Like, made out of bushes? Is that what it is?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically just a big wall that's made out of
but what does it go
hedges.
around? Does it go around?
It doesn't go around. It walls off Buckland. Do you have the map of the Shire?
No, I don't have any maps in my book.
There's no map in your book?
All
right, look at this map.
Already.
Look at this map right here. Come here. Look at this map.
Okay.
All right. So you see here they started at Hobbiton, right?
Yep.
And they've been journeying all this way. And here was, here they were when they were, when they went to the Farmer Maggots, right? And then they come. Here's the Brandywine River, and they cross at Buckleberry Ferry.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they come over here to the other side. This black line right here is the Brandywine River, and then they cross the river over to the other side. And here's the old forest that they're about to enter into. Okay.
Okay.
Here's the Brandywine Bridge. So basically, the Black Riders have to go 20 miles up this way to the Brandywine Bridge, and then come back down this way.
Okay.
But the old forest the old forest is this dangerous place, and so they've built up this hedge in Buckland.
So where's the hedge? Is the hedge on the map?
Yeah, you can see it right here between the old forest and just this area of Buckland right here. Right.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was meant to be a protection against the old forest. Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah. Their land was originally unprotected from the east, but on that side they had built a hedge, the high hay. It had been planted many generations ago and was now thick and tall, for it was constantly tended. It ran all the way from the Brandywine Bridge in a big loop, curving away from the river to Haysend, where the Withywindle flowed out of the forest into the Brandywine, well over 20 miles from end to end. But of course it was not a complete protection. The forest drew close to the hedge in many places. The Bucklanders kept their doors locked after dark, and that also was not usual in the Shire. Mm-hmm. So Buckland is kind of the frontier, right, of the Shire. And I just think the idea of this 20 mile long hedge is kind of nifty.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It seems like made out of... it seems funny because I imagine like little Hobbit kids enjoying playing near the hedge, even though their parents probably warned them against doing it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's basically a natural law.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's it's a natural wall that's been tended and built up over time.
Like, is a hedge really that much protection? I mean, you could get through a hedge if you really wanted to.
I think it's that's a good point. I think for the hobbits, I think it's more of a I think it's more of something that, it's not like a fortification so much. Mm-hmm. You know, like a military fortification.
Yeah.
It would definitely impede if there was some force coming from the east into the Shire. It would definitely impede that. Mm-hmm. But it's not really about a military force, I don't think. Okay. I think it's just about the unknown things that live in the old forest.
Like a
and it's setting a boundary,
fence,
right?
Kind of.
It's setting a boundary to warn off people from going that way and saying, like, you don't know what's on the other side of the hedge, right? Okay. You could find yourself going a few steps into the forest. If there was no hedge, you could be like, there's the forest. I could go a few steps in, and then you go a few steps further, and before you know it, you're in the forest, and you lost, and all that sort of thing. But you put this big hedge up, and it's like, don't go beyond the hedge. Right. It's a very clear, delineated border.
Yes. Do you think it also is a way of the hobbits trying to help themselves forget that it's even there? Like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, that just, because you think about, when houses are put really close together, a lot of times people will plant, like pine trees or something, right? And like on a long row. Right. To block the view so you can't tell that there's actually another house like 10 feet away, right? It's like a privacy thing. And I think part of that is to give that illusion of privacy, maybe of seclusion. Even though it's not real, it still gives you that feeling because you can't see what's beyond it. Right. So.
Yeah, I think that's all. I think that's why we make build fences and that sort of thing in the first place. Is there's even without a fence, there's always going to be a sense of where the property line is, but you build a fence in order to more clearly define it. Right. And I think it's the same thing going on here with the hobbits of Buckland. Is they're like, at some point, people this is a way of marking off and saying this is where the Shire ends, right? Beyond here is danger. Right. Right. Yep. You go past here, we can't be held accountable for what happens to you, right? Whereas without that, you could be. It's kind of like putting a fence around a pool or something like that. Yes. It's basically saying like we did what we needed to do to keep the kid from wandering in there. If the kid had to try to get in there that way, right? Yeah. For in the case of the pool, and I assume that they probably put this hedge up in order to keep kids from going beyond it. Right. So
from just accidentally stumbling.
Right.
And
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes we put walls in place in this world in order to, both real walls and figurative walls, because it's a way of saying, like, beyond this wall, there is danger, and if you don't clearly mark that off, then then maybe people who aren't as wise or aren't as clear on that danger would more easily go in that direction. Right.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. Good job at making that a more interesting.
Oh yeah.
topic.
No problem.
Yeah, I just thought it was cool, but you had to go and start asking all kinds of deep questions about it. Man.
It's just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. So we said this chapter is. You know what? Let's maybe take a quick break. I think this would be a good break, and then we'll come back and continue talking about the chapter. So.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Let's do that.
Let's do it. Don't go away.
Stay tuned.
Do you know the tale that Tolkien called the kernel of the Middle-earth mythology? Beren and Luthien is the story of an outlaw mortal and an elvish princess tasked with obtaining a Silmaril, one of the holy jewels of the Blessed Realm, from the Iron Crown of the Dark Lord Morgoth. In my new book, Tolkien's Requiem, I explore the legend of these doomed lovers. In doing so, I aim to provide a backdoor into the world of the Silmarillion for those who have struggled to give it a go. One of Tolkien's greatest achievements, the story of Beren and Luthien, deserves to be as well known as The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Get your copy of Tolkien's Requiem today by visiting truemyths.org/Beren. That's truemyths.org/BEREN. Happy reading! All right, and we're back. So, we talked about the hedge.
Yep.
Talked about the animalistic nature or appearance of the Black Rider.
Yep.
What next? What next in your mind? What other things did you mark out here in this chapter? I have some things. I really started marking out things towards the end of the chapter that I found interesting, but I don't know. Did you find anything interesting in bath time other than just the the song itself?
No, the song was pretty nifty.
I will say this. I think it's funny. Probably I'd take a shower every day. I don't know about you, Greta.
Yeah.
But probably most people who are listening to this podcast take a shower every day, right? Mm-hmm. And if you go more than one day without taking a shower, you're like, oh man, I feel gross. And I was watching the Ken Burns documentary on World War II the other day, and they were talking, these guys talking about, these old GIs talking about how they went 6 months without taking a shower, and I'm just like, that must have just, at some point I'm sure you just forget,
Yeah,
what it's even like.
Have to.
But I think this is kind of, sometimes the hobbits are good at reminding us of everything that's like, of all the things we take for granted that are really good in life.
Mm-hmm. Just simple pleasures.
Yeah, the very simple pleasures.
Reading this made me want to go take a bath.
I know.
I'm not a big bath person. I prefer showers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Most of us probably take showers, but
bath is a luxury.
Yeah, but I bet after being in the woods for several days,
I'm sure
the bath
was
awesome.
And it sounds so lovely, about the copper. There was 3 tubs, and there was a copper full of boiling water, and and I guess what else struck me was, I guess it was Pippin, who was just having a ball in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically throwing the water up and making fountains out of it. And when he was done, there was all this water on the floor. And aren't they supposed to be 50 years old? Right? And I was like, that's, I think that's really what struck me is how old these guys are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as far as I know that their longevity is longer than ours, but even so, it's not like these are kids.
Yeah.
But Pippin is totally acting like a little kid would act.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally something that our 6-year-old would do, right?
Yeah.
And think it was just hilarious and wonderful.
Right.
And here Pippin's doing the same thing.
Right.
That's what that was. But that's, again, I think probably just Tolkien's way of showing just the sheer joy of, of this simple pleasure.
Mm-hmm. And even just the singing going on, it may seem kind of weird to us again, but
You don't
we're
sing? I
we're,
sing in the shower.
we're surrounded by music. Like we can just do music. We can have music at any time, right? We can have music fed to us and piped to us at any time. But I think sometimes we also forget the pleasure that people before those times must have had in just making up songs, breaking into it sort of spontaneously.
To fill that void. Yeah.
Not like deep songs, but just little tributes to whatever they were enjoying at that particular moment.
Yes.
It's funny how this one little chapter this one little scene that seems a bit trifling can serve to put things in perspective. And I got to thinking about why Tolkien has spent so much time. I mean, basically we're on the third chapter now. There's not a ton going on. I know the Black Riders are in pursuit, but there hasn't been a whole bunch of action. Definitely not. It's about to start, right?
Yeah.
In the coming chapters.
Yeah.
Things are going to start rising to this very grand, epic sort of scale. But we're still just in this world of hobbits being hobbits and enjoying very hobbit-like things, just taking pleasure in the humble things of life.
Things in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're also getting, a good look at, again, I think the character development can't be overlooked here either, because we're really getting a good look at what are these hobbits all about. I mean, here's, last chapter we had a good look at Sam, his loyalty and, just his bravery and his desire to stick with Frodo through thick and thin. And here, we're introduced to Merry, right? We get to know Merry a little bit, and all the trouble he went to, that he and Fatty went to get that house all set up. I mean, they basically moved stuff, right, from Frodo's old house to his new house, and they got these tubs. I mean, they did so much work to get things ready for him. And, I think this bath scene is really endearing. It just, I think it's really serving to connect us with the hobbits so that we really can understand and relate to what they're going to be going through in the next few chapters.
Yeah.
Because the better we know them, the better we're going to understand what's to come.
Right.
And how they react to things.
Yeah, well, and I wonder, too, if this is, just showing us how much the hobbits do delight in little things and in everyday things.
It's really showing their childlike innocence, really.
It's showing their innocence. It's also, I think, maybe giving us a hint of why they are the perfect candidates for carrying out the mission that needs to be carried out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That they are not overly concerned with the great things of the world, right?
Right.
They're not worried about who's in power and who's in charge and who's going to win the upcoming election and all of these sorts of things, but they're very connected to the everyday and to the natural world, right?
Yep.
And they don't concern themselves with things that are too profound for them, unless they really have to. Right. Right.
And that enables them to focus on their mission all the more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Well, interesting. So, now you want to talk about friendship?
Friendship?
Yeah.
Yeah, friendship rocks.
Well, yeah. Friendship's a good thing.
Friendship cannot be, good friends cannot be overrated or overappreciated. I was just really touched by, not just how much trouble Merry and Fatty went to get everything ready. Right. But then also once the conspiracy is unmasked, right? Yeah. When Frodo's so... And, and you could tell, you ache for Frodo because you're like, oh, this sucks, these friends are amazing and look at everything they've done for you and now you have to leave, And so it made my heart happy for him when he realized, oh, they get it. They know, and yet they still want to be my friend and they still want to stay with me. you just cannot put a price tag on that kind of devotion.
Right.
And they know, and Frodo tries to talk them out of it, just like he tried to talk Sam out of it, right? And he's like, no, I can't, we're going to be walking into the, to the dark shadows, and we probably will never come back, and all that. And yet they're like, no, we understand. Like, we understand, and that's why we decided to come. We know that this is not a vacation. We know it's no laughing matter. We get it, and we want to stay with you. Right. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I think, consider, I don't know if you remember this from the Jackson films, but do you remember how Merry and Pippin got, because Sam comes along, the portrayal of how Sam gets roped into it is pretty accurate to the book, or is pretty close to what happens in the book. Mm-hmm. But do you remember how Merry and Pippin get roped into it?
From the movie?
Yeah.
I don't remember. No.
It's just completely an accident. Like they're like stealing they're stealing mushrooms from Farmer Maggot, and Sam and Frodo happen to be walking through the farm, and they go like running into each other.
Oh.
Yeah. So Merry and Pippin totally in the movie are like, I mean, you get the sense that they know Frodo and Sam, and that maybe they're friends, but they were not like on a conspiracy. They were not involved in any kind of conspiracy.
So the movie doesn't go into the conspiracy at all?
No.
Oh,
not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. So I think that's another thing to appreciate about the book, is that it takes pains to emphasize that there is a high level of friendship and of loyalty that exists here. They form this band of brothers, that are devoted to their friend, right, and watching his back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing better in the world. Whenever you say that, you can always find something, but there are a few things better in the world than knowing that you have people that got your back, no matter what,
yeah.
and that are always looking out for your best interest. It's very liberating,
and
it frees you to do the things that you need to do, right?
Yeah,
and that you're called to do.
Absolutely.
I like what Merry says to Frodo. It all depends on what you want, put in Merry. You can trust us to stick to you through thick and thin, to the bitter end, and you can trust us to keep any secret of yours closer than you keep it yourself. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone and go off without a word. We are your friends, Frodo. Anyway, there it is. We know most of what Gandalf has told you. We know a good deal about the ring. We are horribly afraid we are coming with you, or following you like hounds. Right?
Yeah, I like that. Following you like hounds. That was really...
Yeah.
You get the sense, right, of dogs being, man's best friend.
Right.
Right? Being the most loyal of all animals.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was an appropriate simile. Is that what that is when you use like?
Like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful moment of true friendship and a willingness to sacrifice one's own self for the sake of a dear friend. So
yeah,
I think it was brilliant of Tolkien to include this, just so we're clear from the outset that the four of them set out on the basis of a friendship, that they are there and they have Frodo's back for better or for worse.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I thought this was really funny where Pippin says, "You must go, and therefore we must too. Merry and I are coming with you. Sam is an excellent fellow and would jump down a dragon's throat to save you, if he did not trip over his own feet." But you don't need more than one companion in your dangerous adventure. And you can tell that, it doesn't even say here that Frodo is like he was like, all right, fine, you've twisted my arm, we'll do it. And he basically said, oh, I should dance for joy. If the danger were not so dark, I should dance for joy.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, I'm sure, incredibly relieved and happy and feels very loved. But at the same time, there's that shadow.
Right.
Just that darkness that's kind of a cloud,
mm-hmm.
Over it all.
Yeah. Well, and at some point, even when your friends are willing to go and have your back on something like this, you realize, at some point that it becomes your own, and you can't keep expecting them and asking them to follow you further
right.
and further into it.
Right.
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 And I think Frodo maybe has some sense of that
mm-hmm.
That there will come a time when they can't continue along with him. Right. He can't reasonably expect them to continue along with him.
Right.
Even though they probably will say they will, he's going to have to, for their sake, and in order to kind of repay the friendship,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To show his true friendship to them, he's going to have to say, I can't. I have to force you guys to stay,
right.
to go away, right?
Right.
Because the danger is just growing too great.
Right.
At this
and he
point.
would probably see it as a failure on his end,
mm-hmm.
right? A failure of his friendship if he didn't do that.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that would stay with him.
Yeah. So they sing another song about setting out, and
mm-hmm.
it talks about how it's made on the model of the dwarf song that started Bilbo on his adventure long ago. So this is built on in the first chapter of The Hobbit, the far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to seek the pale enchanted gold. So this was the song the dwarfs sang at Bag End when they were telling Bilbo about the thing they wanted him to come.
Oh, right.
The adventure they wanted him to go on with them.
Yeah.
And Merry and Pippin have probably heard that song before from Bilbo, and so they've kind of made their own variation of it. Farewell we call to hearth and hall. Though wind may blow and rain may fall, we must away ere break of day, far over wood and mountain tall. So you can hear the same sort of rhythm and cadence going on there.
Yes.
To Rivendell, where elves yet dwell, and glades beneath the misty fell. Through moor and waste we ride in haste, and whither then we cannot tell. With foes ahead, behind us dread, beneath the sky shall be our bed, until at last our toil be past, our journey done, our errand sped. We must away, we ride before the break of day. And it's funny because I think they put in that we ride before the break of day thing as a way of it's a poetic way of communicating urgency.
Yes.
But Frodo's basically like, yep, we need to leave before the break of day. And they're like, whoa, that was just poetry. Pippin's like, that was just poetry. Come on, man. Do you really mean to start before the break of day?
Right.
Yeah. And Pippin's like, I need a good night's sleep,
Yeah.
But the whole time they're here, in the back of my mind, I'm like, dudes, the riders are coming and they're on horses.
Mm-hmm.
And and even the people who are guarding that bridge up north are hobbits, and I'm pretty sure these riders could take the hobbits.
They could take the hobbits, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I'm just like the whole time we're going through this chapter, I do find it a little bit surprising that they seem pretty comfortable, and even Merry admits at one point, he's like, they could have reached here by now, of course, if they were not stopped at the North Gate, and he kind of talks about the logistics of where they stopped or not. Mm-hmm. But then again, the riders don't exactly know what house the hobbits are in.
That's true. It would take a little bit of work on their part. And the house that he's in, you can't, they have to travel down it's not like right on the main road.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of at the end of a side street.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, and I don't know if you remember from early on in the chapter when it was talking about seeing the other bank as they were coming, seeing the far bank as they were coming over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it said that Frodo chose this particular house because you couldn't see it from a certain place, right?
Right, but people know he's coming, and the people have known he's coming, so there's going to be, it wouldn't take too long probably to figure it out. But at the same time, where is it? I should have marked it. Anyway, it talks about them seeing the far bank and seeing all of these lights, and so there were a lot of different houses over here in this area. It's not like it was just like this house in the middle of nowhere. This is kind of like a big neighborhood, and there's lots of houses around. Mm-hmm. So there is, I guess, safety in the crowd.
Right.
Going on, at least for a little bit. That gives them a little bit of extra time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other thing, one thing I want to point out about that poem, though, before we move on from that, to Rivendell, where elves yet dwell, and glades beneath the misty fell, through moor and waste we ride in haste, and whither then we cannot tell. In The Hobbit, it was far away to the misty mountains, right? We go. Mm-hmm. And even then, they had a sense they were going even further. To dungeons deep in caverns old we must away ere break of day. They knew they were going to this place that was way farther away than just the Misty Mountains. But here, all Frodo and the hobbits know is that they're going to Rivendell, which isn't even over the Misty Mountains. It's at the foot of the Misty Mountains on their side. Right. So they know they're going to Rivendell, and then beyond there, they cannot tell. Right. Yep. So there is a sense in which they don't expect to have an adventure necessarily as great as long as Bilbo's. They're hoping to just drop the ring off at Rivendell and then be on their way back, and then the Black Riders are someone else's problem. Yeah. But even then, getting there at this point, Bilbo, when he set out, didn't expect. He didn't have any Black Riders on his trail. Right. Before he got over the Misty Mountains. At any point he didn't, but he didn't really experience, other than the trolls, he didn't experience a lot of danger until after Rivendell. Right. And here they are experiencing danger already. Mm-hmm. So, it's like Tolkien through these words is making a big deal about, just the journey, the compacted journey to Rivendell, and the danger that they're already under. They're under there, but they're going to obviously learn so much more, and have to go through so much more as the story goes on. Right. Yeah. So, all right. So,
they apparently expect to return.
Yeah. Well. Couldn't be very happy if they didn't expect to return. You gotta have the hope of expecting to return.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to despair. That's for sure.
Yeah. So they decide they have a choice between going up and meeting the road. And again, you might want to look at my map here of the Shire, because I know you don't have one in your book, just to give this perspective. But they've got this east road that they've got to take to Bree, and then on the way to Rivendell, all the way to Rivendell, right? That road would go. But they're right here, and so their question is, do we go up there and risk passing by the Black Riders, or do we go through the Old Forest? And it's a pretty obvious answer when they consider it, right? Mm-hmm. They've got to go through the Old Forest. Yeah. And what do they say about the Old Forest? You remember?
Well, I know it's not, like I said, it's a rock and a hard place. I mean, it's not like they're excited about going through the dark forest. In fact, who is this guy? Fatty?
Yeah, Frediger.
Yeah. Fatty. He's like trying to talk them out of it. He's like, there's no way that I would go in there. There's all kinds of, all kinds of crazy things and trees that attack you, and I mean, who knows? But I mean, they probably don't even. It's just myths and legends at this point, right?
Well, yeah. Here's what Fatty says. He says, "Well, do as you think best. I am more afraid of the Old Forest than of anything I know about. The stories about it are a nightmare. But my vote hardly counts, as I am not going on the journey. Still, I am very glad someone is stopping behind who can tell Gandalf what you have done when he turns up, as I am sure he will before long." He just says the stories about it are a nightmare. Yeah. And he said earlier, before that, he said no one ever has luck in there. You'll get lost. People don't go in there.
Yeah.
And he says it's quite as dangerous as Black Riders.
He equivocates the two?
Yeah. Yeah. What were you going to say?
In a different way. I was just going to say, I think I'm trying to remember just from the movie. Is this the place where like you just get like completely disoriented and there's no light, right? Because they're so
You're thinking I think you're actually thinking of The Hobbit, the second Hobbit movie where they go through Mirkwood.
Oh yeah, maybe I am. So what are the real dangers in this then?
That's the thing. The Old Forest is not the next several chapters are not in the movie Fellowship at all.
But they don't even really know what they're getting into.
No.
Right? Because no one's really ever lived to tell.
Right. Well, even Mary says he's been in several times, but he usually goes in during daylight, right? Not for protracted stays, right? Not for protracted journeys.
Right. He doesn't go in very far either.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all they know, again, they're kind of going off of legend and of, again, we have that whole thing of legend going on where it's like we don't know for sure, but we've heard things, right?
Right, and they're not good.
Yeah.
Things we've heard. Yeah.
So, yeah, we got the Old Forest to look forward to.
Old Forest. I think, so Frediger, who's staying behind, right, because they don't leave a note or anything. So he's staying behind to tell, in case Gandalf shows up, to tell him where they've gone. And I think he's looking at that as like, he's got the easy job, right? He's like, I just got to hang out here and wait for Gandalf.
Right.
Right? But the other hobbits are like, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, right? I mean, there's a good chance Black Riders are going to come to your door, and that doesn't sound like fun to me. I'll take the Old Forest. So it's almost like, you feel like maybe the Merry and Pippin and Sam and Frodo have the short end of the stick, and Fatty's got the cush job here, but I don't think that's necessarily true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, hey, sometimes you got to go through the Old Forest, though. Sometimes you realize the road has its own, the well-paved road has its own problems and issues that would keep
You're
you from
getting meta-tolkien on me right now.
Fulfilling, I am.
You're getting totally
from fulfilling your, from the thing you're being called to do, right?
No,
sometimes you got to go through the
right.
Old Forest, through that place that no one else is willing to go, and figure out what story is going to be told in your life through that Old Forest, right?
Take the road less traveled.
Yes. Thank you, Robert Frost.
You're welcome.
Yes.
That's a good metaphor.
No,
I like that.
Just trying to get a little meta on you.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah. I agree.
So, let's talk about this dream that Frodo has.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's really weird. It's a strange dream. First of all, you've got... so here we go. He was glad that he was riding in the morning. Eventually, he fell into a vague dream in which he seemed to be looking out of a high window over a dark sea of tangled trees. Down below, among the room, there was the sound of creatures crawling, or among the roots, there was the sound of creatures crawling and snuffling. He felt sure they would smell him out sooner or later. Then he heard a noise in the distance. At first he thought it was a great wind coming over the leaves of the forest. Then he knew that it was not leaves, but the sound of the sea far off. A sound he had never heard in waking life, though it had often troubled his dreams. Suddenly he found he was out in the open. There were no trees after all. He was on a dark heath, and there was a strange salt smell in the air. Looking up, he saw before him a tall white tower standing alone on a high ridge. A great desire came over him to climb the tower and see the sea. He started to struggle up the ridge towards the tower, but suddenly a light came in the sky, and there was a noise of thunder. So very stark and ominous dream.
Definitely ominous.
Two big scenes, right? The first one is looking out over this dark sea of tangled trees and hearing the creatures crawling and snuffling, which is kind of weird and frightening in its own way. And then you get this very stark picture of him looking out over this, I think you said Heath. And then there's this white tower, this huge white tower that apparently looks out over the sea. So I looked that up. Apparently it's, I'll show you a picture. It's like a sort of a flat land that contains all of these like all this scrub and brush.
Like just like overgrowth, untended land.
It's almost like a plain that's very untended, right? Here, I'll show you a picture. There's a picture of I think you say it, heath. Yeah. but there's a picture of two different types right there. We're looking at the pictures on the Wikipedia article about Heth.
Mm-hmm.
Heth. I don't know, what is it? I'm wondering if it's related to heather.
It might be, because it
so
says
Heth?
a heath or heathland is a shrubland habitat.
Yeah.
Huh. How interesting. Yeah, it says it's moorland is generally related to high ground.
Right.
It's a British Isles thing.
It just shows how disconnected we are.
I know.
And whenever they use, whenever people talk about flowers and different types of trees and everything, I'm just like, I know nothing about nature,
I don't know anything about nature either.
Well, I feel like you know a little bit more about agriculture, like flower types and tree types and that kind of thing than I do.
A little bit, but I didn't know what a heth was.
Yeah.
What would do though? So he's looking over this.
Mm-hmm. And there's a tall white tower standing alone on a high ridge. Right?
Okay.
So, yeah, these are weird dreams. Like most dreams, these are weird things. They're weird things. They don't necessarily make sense to us right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to read you something. There's this really interesting connection. The thing of the tower that looks over the sea is a very important thing for Tolkien. In the mid-30s, he wrote this essay called "The Monsters and the Critics" on Beowulf, and this was before The Hobbit was even published, right?
Okay.
And in it, he's talking about the point of this essay is that critics are so obsessed with reading Beowulf for its historical significance that they miss the beauty and the meaning of the poem itself.
Okay.
Right? And in it, he says, he actually writes an allegory that goes like this. A man inherited a field in which was an accumulation of old stone, part of an older hall. On the old stones, some had already been used in building the house in which he actually lived, not far from the old house of his fathers. Of the rest he took some and built a tower. But his friends, coming, perceived at once, without troubling to climb the steps, that these stones had formerly belonged to a more ancient building. So they pushed the tower over with no little labor in order to look for hidden carvings and inscriptions, or to discover whence the man's distant forefathers had obtained their building material. Some, suspecting a deposit of coal under the soil, began to dig for it, and forgot even the stones. They all said, "This tower is most interesting." But they also said, after pushing it over, "What a muddle it is in." And even the man's own descendants, who might have been expected to consider what he had been about, were heard to murmur, "He is such an odd fellow. Imagine his using these old stones just to build a nonsensical tower. Why did not he restore the old house? He had no sense of proportion. But from the top of that tower the man had been able to look out upon the sea." Right? So, Tolkien is basically saying here, the problem of Beowulf is that it's this epic poem that's stuck between the paganism of England's past, ancient past, right, of England's ancient history, and the Christianity of its future, right?
Okay.
And it combines elements of both into one thing, and it's really frustrating in a way for a lot of scholars who want it to be this thing that tells us more about England's ancient history and culture, right? But Tolkien's saying that, look, it may contain all of that kind of stuff, but if that's the only thing you're looking for, then you're missing the big picture, right? The man who wrote this, whoever did write it, we don't know, but whoever did write it wasn't writing it to give us a historical account of ancient England, right?
Okay.
Or to give us an artifact of historical value. He was writing something to give people a view of the sea, to give people a view of beauty and a greater perspective on the world, right? A greater perspective on reality, right? So I have to feel like this is very connected to what, Frodo's dream here, right? You go back and read manuscripts, and Tolkien was including something like this in very early drafts, not too many years after he would have written that. Okay? So I think this was... I feel like this is going to come back and have greater significance in the story itself later.
Okay.
But Tolkien doesn't give us a lot of textual clues right now as to what it is. So I don't want to get too too into it and try and figure it all out.
Right.
Because I know dreams can be weird things. And so I think for the sake of yielding to the realism which Tolkien wants to give, we can't sit here and try to figure out what this dream is all about.
No,
right?
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
I think it's just, I know that when I have dreams, usually it's related to something I feel anxious about. But what's really weird is that it's usually something, the things that happen in my dreams are usually not the thing that's primarily on my mind. It's usually something that's kind of in the back of my mind. Right. It usually involves something that's in the back of my mind. And I don't know exactly what to make of them. They're just this thing that happens to you. What do you do with them? People have tried to read dreams and figure out like there's some kind of fortune cookie to help guide you in life. Right. But sometimes I think they're ways of us just understanding our own anxieties and our own.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's
what are the things we're focused on?
Yes, and I think they can also be a way of purging some of those fears. Honestly, I think that's also what appears in dreams a lot. Like you said, things that you're anxious about, things that you're afraid of, but things that you don't even necessarily know you're afraid of because it's the subconscious, right, coming to light. So, in a way, dreams can be therapeutic in that way. I think that they can, that you can kind of experience those fears in a very safe, non-threatening way, and then when you wake, you're like, oh, that was silly. I have no reason to be afraid of that. But that's interesting. That's a really interesting connection you made with that allegory that Tolkien wrote about the Beowulf poem. Because I guess he was saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I interpreted that he was saying these people were basically giving this guy a hard time for not rebuilding his house, right? Which would have been the practical, smart thing to do. No, instead he builds this tower, right, which seems to really have no purpose. Oh, but no, it has a purpose, and you can sort of see, right. So, do you think Tolkien's maybe, in a way, it's kind of a call to, first of all, to not be afraid of the unknown, and second of all, to have a wider lens, have a broader perspective of what's to come.
Yeah, think about in Middle Earth, what's across the sea, right? For them, like what's across the sea from where Frodo is right now.
Oh, the tower.
Well, no, yes, there is a tower, but overall, it's the Blessed Realm, right? The Blessed Realm is across the sea.
Right. Yes.
Now, there's some interesting things about how exactly that works that we'll get into when we come back to the Silmarillion. Okay. But yeah, across the sea. First of all, the sea is something that is very beautiful and has its own majesty and mystery and mystical quality to it because it's Ulmo's realm, right? So in Tolkien's world, the sea is not just this big body of water; it's this mystical thing, right? But further across the sea, right, there's the Blessed Realm kind of calling to you, right? And it's the same feeling I get when I go to like the ocean and I just look out across the sea, and the realist will say, well, across the sea there's a lot more sea, and then finally you get to like Europe or something like that, right? But at the same time, you look out at that horizon, and the more poetic side of you will do more with it, right? And say, this is beautiful. There's just, it just seems endless, right? It seems eternal.
It does, yeah. And you realize your own, you feel so small. Like you it puts things in perspective.
It raises your mind to the eternal.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And I think that's what, more than anything, what Tolkien is trying to say in that allegory, right? That it raises your mind to the eternal. I feel like I didn't mark the references. I wish I had now, but I feel like there's early in the book, it was talking about Frodo had always longed to go like to the tower, because there are actual towers towards the sea. Remember, I think they talk about the elves going to the towers to look out upon the sea.
Yes.
There are actual towers that they know of that where you can look out upon the sea.
Right.
And I know Frodo had longed to do that. The elves had longed to do that. And so part of me almost wonders if this is a way of saying, Frodo, you're going to have to go through this dark sea of trees and of the unknown, but on the other side there's going to be a greater understanding, a greater perspective, a greater view, right?
Yeah.
A greater ability to just, to contemplate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
The good will possibly come from.
Yeah.
From something that apparently, that appears evil.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it'll all become more apparent to us as the chapters go on. I feel like maybe this is somehow related to something that Gandalf is going through at this moment, but I can't remember for sure. We're going to find out more about what's been going on with Gandalf.
Yeah, I'm anxious for Gandalf to come back.
Well, it's going to be several more chapters before we see him again.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well, now I'm prepared.
Yeah, but he'll tell us all about where he's been. So
right.
No worries.
Yes. Yeah, he'll catch us up. Right.
All right. Well, that is the end of that.
Yes, it is.
Next time we will read chapter 6 and discuss chapter 6, which is the Old Forest.
Awesome.
The Old Forest. So it starts getting a little weird in the Old Forest. Starts getting kind of.
Some stuff might start to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it will.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody for listening. And,
yes, thank you.
We're always looking for more haiku contributors. So we'd love to know who our next super fan is going to be, contributing some awesome haiku on a regular basis. Josh, keep them coming.
Yes, please.
And please do the best. The other thing a super fan can do if they're not inclined to doing haiku is leave us a rating on iTunes. Those always help. Those help get the word out more about the show, and that's much appreciated.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right, Greta, thank you.
John, thank you.
All right.
All right, guys.
We will talk at you next time. Take care.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Please remember to check out truemyths.org for show notes as well as other Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, would you please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes? It's a great way to support the show and only takes a minute or two. On the next episode, we continue our discussion of The Lord of the Rings with Chapter 6 of Fellowship, The Old Forest. Please tune in, and thanks for listening.